Special counsel Jack Smith seems to be good at his job, or should we say jobs, as he oversees the documents probe of Donald Trump, where there's now an indictment and a trial coming, and this coup probe of January 6, where allies are apparently flipping. Take this former Trump campaign official named Mike Roman. He is, quote, cooperating with prosecutors from Jack Smith's team, according to a CNN report. All of this is part of the broader probe, not only into the Jan 6th insurrection, but the wider efforts to overthrow democracy and Trump's laws. This article, this report I just mentioned, says Roman's cooperation is part of a, quote, proffer agreement. That's the same type of deal we recently told you about, and Smith's team can then get information. He won't use it against that individual. And we know he's done that with this guy and with Giuliani. Now, this guy, Roman, was a key player in that elector plot that I've told you so much about. Indeed, when we first started reporting on it, people said, well, what does this matter? Or if it didn't really happen, well, an incomplete or ineffective or failed effort to stage a coup is still a huge deal. That's why there's attempted murder. It's different than murder, but it's a big deal. And we also know from reporting that has been done in the print outlets, the Jan 6 committee's work, our own interviews and reporting here on The Beat, and Rachel Maddow's reporting, take it all together, and we actually have a pretty good idea about who was working on this plot that I've told you has legal exposure if you commit fraud in front of the government. We know that it involved Giuliani, who I just mentioned is now also doing a proffer, Boris Epstein, who is overseeing the lawyers defending Donald Trump right now, and Jenna Ellis, who detailed part of the plot to me right here on The Beat.
That was part of the process to make sure there were alternate electors for when, as we hoped, the challenges to the seated electors would be heard and would be successful per the 12th Amendment of the Constitution and the Electoral Count Act.
The election was stolen and President Trump won by a landslide. And how you're mischaracterizing this, I think that your viewers need to understand the truth of this.
Everything that was done illegally by the Trump legal team, according to the rules and under the leadership of Rudy Giuliani.
That's just some of what we gathered from people at the time. And only they know why and how they spoke out. Epstein, for example, was trying to put his best defense forward, arguing that this was a constitutional process. Well, right now it's under criminal investigation, and some of his colleagues, potentially co-conspirators, are talking because there is a chance that it's not viewed as constitutional, that it's viewed as part of a crime. And we know when Roman was questioned by the Congressional Committee on this, specifically about the electors plot, he repeatedly pled the Fifth, and that matters because this is an individual who, faced with the opportunity to clear this up and just explain, hey, here's what we did, or here's why we knew it was legal, or here's why it's no big deal. That's something you could use your testimony to do. Instead, he said something very different. He said he was worried if he answered truthfully, he would incriminate himself in crimes, and that's why he pled the Fifth.
Did you discuss the alternate electors plan with President Trump, either before or after the electors met and cast votes on December 14th, 2020?
The 5th.
And in this email, Mr. Finley wrote, Rudy's team has designated Ken Chesebro as the point person for the legal documents and Mike Roman as the lead for executing the voting on Monday. Is it accurate that Mr. Giuliani designated you as the lead for executing the voting by alternate electors in advance of December 14th and the meeting of the Electoral College?
The 5th.
The 5th. Specifically on the truth of whatever happened related to those plots. Now, Roger Stone and Paul Manafort had a different strategy. They worked for Trump. They stonewalled the person who used to have this special counsel job in a different fact pattern. That was Bob Mueller. Ultimately, they faced accusations of lying to Mueller's investigators, and then they got pardons from Trump. Take former Trump CFO Allen Weisselberg, who went to jail rather than fully flip on Trump. So we know that many people, for whatever the reasons, have gone to great lengths not to flip on Donald Trump. But now Jack Smith is making progress with this gentleman I told you about and with Giuliani, and getting them to at least start the process of saying the things that they wouldn't say elsewhere, things that they previously said were covered by the Fifth Amendment. And that raises the question of, one, whether they will ultimately provide the kind of material that Smith can use against other people involved in these alleged potential crimes, or even Trump himself, and two, whether there are more indictments coming. We're back with National Security Lawyer Bradley Moss. Take it away. What does it mean that Smith is getting some of this information?
No, this is huge for that January 6th investigation that Jack Smith's running, because it gets him into the inner circle. We know he's already talked to multiple lawyers that were both in the White House and in the post-White House campaign to get some context as to what was going on. But with someone like Mr. Roman, it's that lead-up. It's that period of time between December 14th, when the Electoral College votes were certified, in January 6th, that very critical period of time where there was no longer any basis for alternate electors. The precedent from 1960 was no longer valid. And yet this campaign was still trying to get these slates submitted to NAR. They were trying to get them submitted to Vice President Pence on January 6th, the Eastman plan. This gives them more detailed insider knowledge. Whether or not it results in indictments, well, we're just going to all have to wait on that one.
And we showed viewers some of the history, including some of the public statements by people involved in this. As an attorney, what is your assessment of those stated defenses that we heard, some of which were kind of offered before they knew how much heat that would come from Special Counsel Smith?
I think a lot of those are more political talking points than actual true legal defenses. But look, if there are indictments, if the lawyers get indicted, the Rudy Giuliani's and the Sidney Powell's and the Jeff Clarks of the world, if some of the political players get indicted, and of course, if Donald Trump himself gets indicted, there's going to be extensive pretrial motions, an extensive array of challenges as a matter of law to these allegations and to whatever the charges are that are arrayed against them. I fully expect those things will get appealed up. I fully expect all of that will partially be the reason why I don't ever expect that kind of thing to get to trial before November 2024. But those defenses, in my view, far more, just like in the documents case, they're more political talking points masquerading as legal defenses.
Yeah. And Mike Roman is not a household name. It's certainly different than Giuliani, but we have a little bit more of the text here on that deposition from the committee probe where they said, did you ever talk to the president about other options for changing or affecting the results of the 2020 election? And he says the fifth. Why does that matter? Because in the abundance of fairness, I have mentioned and reported that there are plenty of legal conversations you could have about trying to see whether you'd get a different outcome. Viewers remember many state races that have had recounts. Lawsuits, of course, are legal to file. Indeed, even filing a frivolous lawsuit, which can lead to sanction, is not a crime. In other words, if you and I don't practice anymore, but if you or I were practicing and somebody said, I want to file this, and we warned them, this might really be actually verging on frivolous, and they said file it anyway, we could debate that out. But if you file that, it's not a crime. When this individual says to Congress, well, if I answer this honestly, I might incriminate myself in a crime. What does that tell you?
So honestly, when it came to that, to the congressional probe, I think that was just overprotective lawyering. I'm pretty sure his lawyer said, you're invoking the fifth to everything. You're not answering questions on anything. Doesn't mean that he actually has something there of value. That's why hearing about these proffer sessions, both what Rudy Giuliani did and what Mr. Roman did, that's where it's getting interesting of what do they actually have of value, of relevant material information that they can give to Jack Smith that would be informative to any issue of a potential indictment that they could barter with in order to avoid or at least minimize their own criminal exposure. That's something I expect we'll see and we'll get more clarity on if there are indictments.
Yeah.
Won't know before that.
Yeah. And before I lose you on the documents probe, long-time, really studious Beat viewers may remember we quoted you in a separate piece the other day. We didn't have you on television, but we quoted you for the proposition that if people plead out and have government experience in these classified docs cases, they can sometimes avoid prison time. But if they don't, if they fight it all the way, which Trump's lawyers have said he intends to do, and they're convicted, that tends to then lead to prison time. Could you walk us through that precedent?
Sure. There are, examples of people who've gotten caught up in mishandling of classified information cases. You think of General Petraeus, who got off of basically a slap on the wrist, despite what I thought should have been a far more severe punishment, but who got away with not having significant exposure and didn't have to go to prison. To my knowledge, anyone who's ever taken this all the way, gone to trial and been convicted, it didn't matter how few or how many documents, it didn't matter how many mitigating circumstances there were at sentencing. there was always some kind of prison time. Even with people who pled guilty, you think a Reality Winner, she went to prison for several years for the one document. So if Donald Trump actually ends up in trial over the documents case, and if he gets convicted, I don't see any way he avoids prison time. His only hope in that case is he can get reelected to the presidency, or someone of his party can get elected and pardon him.